for too long time in the eyes of the EU. Indeed, there are currently no rules to protect the 1 billion farmed fish every year in the EU and the trillions more we caught aquatic animals in fisheries which we import live in the EU. Yet aquatic animals such as fish, crustaceans, cephalopods are sentient beings which can feel pleasure and pain just like their terrestrial counterparts. We urgently need to remedy this injustice and to introduce rules to protect these animals too. And citizens are calling for change. So this recent survey produced by Sapiens Institute polling 9,000 citizens over 9 key fisheries and aquaculture countries, including Czechia, France, Germany, Greece, Italy, Poland, Spain, Sweden, and the Netherlands, reveals that 9 out of 10 citizens want better protection for farmed fish. 8 out of 10 say they would support legislation that requires the use of best practices and latest science to meet welfare needs. 9 out of 10 would like to buy higher welfare products. 8 out of 10 believe EU funding should only go to high welfare farms, and over 2/3 call for clear welfare labeling that reflect how the fish were reared. And finally, a majority of citizens harbor the opinion that live sale of aquatic animals to consumers should be banned. But however, public awareness of aquaculture practices remain low, with more than 6 out of 10 EU citizens who are not aware of the following shocking facts. So the fact, first of all, that most farmed salmon are deaf due to intensive breeding. The percentage of farmed fish that die during rearing is much higher than farmed land animals, and fish usually spend 2 to 5 years growing on farms, and wild-caught fish are a common ingredient in farmed fish feeds, and most farmed fish are not stunned before slaughter, and antibiotics are commonly used in fishing farming, contributing, as you all know, then to antibiotic resistance at the humans. So these results are clear and call for rules to protect farmed aquatic animals during all stages of farming. And I would like now to welcome you to join me at the end of the session, also for a group photo at the end with the banners. And there we have the banners, just that you see them. Not that we forget, that's why I show it now, not that you run away doing that, we make a common picture afterwards. But now I give the floor to Emma Wiesner. She is from an MEP from Renew and member of the Committee of Fisheries of PECH, who will react to the survey results and provide also insights into PECH Committee's work plan and opportunities to introduce animal welfare in upcoming fisheries, oceans and aquaculture fights. Emma, thank you for being there, and you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me, and thanks to all of the listeners in the room. But I'm also very glad to see that we have so many following us online, listening to this session, and of course also watching it afterwards. My name is Emma Wiesner. I'm a member of Renew Europe Group. I'm a member of Environment Committee, the Agriculture Committee, and the Fisheries Committee. And I would say animal welfare is represented in all 3 of those. Last mandate, also me and Tilly had the opportunity to work together on the Committee on Animal Welfare during transport. And my background is Swedish. I come from the Swedish Center Party, which is a traditional farmers' party, a long tradition of working for higher animal welfare standards. Sweden is one of the front runners when it comes to tackling overuse of antibiotics, making sure that we have high welfare standards on farm level, also in order to reduce antibiotics, but in general increase the welfare. So for me, I think the awareness that we have to raise the bar on animal welfare also during transport, but also in general, was there, but I was not aware how also drastic the situation is on the aquaculture side and the fishing sector, that the need also to shape and form these rules on EU level. It wasn't until very recently I actually realized how serious the situation is. And one example that really still is very close to, I was still so shocked about it, so I still think about it. It was in Carrefour in Brussels. It was the week before New Year's Eve, and there was packaging of live lobsters, a vacuum seal with a package, including a live lobster. And for me, that was shocking, but what was more shocking was the 3rd of January when I came back and the same poor animal was still there in his container. And that for me is not dignity. That is not Brussels in 2023, I think was the year. So for me, that was really a wake-up call. How can we allow these practices? And it was quite an absurd experience. And now learning more about it, I realize it's far from the only experience or bad experience on this. So when reading this study, I must say I learned a lot, so thank you for that. And I'm mainly here to listen today, being one of the agri shadows from PECH on the opinion to agri for animal transport with the aquatic perspective. I think this is a perfect timing. It really feeds into our work. Now we will really start working hands-on regulation, and the animal welfare during transport regulation is really a good opportunity to strengthen these rules. And I'm also very glad that the Commission saw the need to include aquatic sector and fishing sector and the sector we will talk about today mainly. A few things that stood out from the study that I reacted to. The first one you mentioned, Tilly, that most farmed salmon are deaf due to the extensive breeding. For me, that was shocking, and I also think that's something that we as consumers have very little knowledge about. Also, that almost 30% of the people who answered this study do not agree that fish feel pain. That for me was also quite alarming numbers, that the awareness is so low. And then also that how many that are unaware of the overextensive use of antibiotics in this sector. Me, coming with my background from my party, we talk a lot about how we can reduce use of antibiotics in livestock sector and in the farming sector, and indeed also for medical practice. It's very hard. If you're a Swede and want antibiotics today, you really need to go to a doctor and have a strong case and good argument, because we don't want to contribute to overuse of antibiotics. And then we have a whole sector that is using it in a very liberal sense. So that's also quite shocking. Just wrapping up by talking a little bit on the work that is now done in PECH committee. I mean, in this proposal, we now have the opportunity to strengthen animal welfare. And what I would like to see and Renew would like to push for is indeed to shift towards transport of meat rather than live animals. I think that perspective, but also principle, is very important that we cherish, and this is a way of achieving that. But I would also like to highlight the fact that this is only one small part of the package. Many of the numbers and the figures in this report also talking about the standards on farm and at slaughter, and that we cannot target with this regulation. So this is a good first step, but we really need the rest of the package, because we need to increase the standards not only during transport, we also need to increase the standards on the farms at the moment of killing and the slaughter. So those rules are very much needed, and I really hope that we can use this opportunity talking about transport, also highlighting the risks and the factors along the value chain that is now unregulated. So that is also maybe my message to Commission: do whatever you can. Me and Tilly and many members pushed during the Commissioner hearings that the package needs to be delivered. It remains unclear if it will be more elements coming 2026, but I really, really hope so. And this sector particularly is one of the missing elements that we do not have. And Finally, I think this study that is being presented today shows also the economic impact, and it shows that a very low cost investment can make a huge difference. And I think that exactly the positive examples and experiences we need in this work. So thank you also for going into the not only talking about the problem, but also the solutions and bringing cost-effective solutions to the table. I think that's very much welcome. So with that, I will not speak further, but it's a perfect timing, and I also encourage colleagues to be very active on this file, and I look forward to work in the Fisheries Committee with my colleagues there to really strengthen these specific parts of the transport regulation.
Thank you very much, Anna, and it's so good to hear you and also your energy to fight the causes of the fishers in the PECH committee. So thank you very much for your commitment and again for your presentation also here. Our next speaker now is Griffin Carpenter, an independent economist, and he will present an economic analysis of stunning in EU aquaculture, and his intervention will really explore the financial benefits, also already mentioned by Emma, of stunning for the industry, including product quality improvements, operational efficiency, and consumer confidence. So very happy also to have you here, Griffin. The floor is yours also for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. As mentioned, my name is Griffin Carpenter. I'm an environmental economist specializing in economic impacts of environmental policy. This is a new study, was published in December, looking at pre-slaughter stunning in EU aquaculture for finfish. So quick overview of the study. At the moment, most finfish are slaughtered by being put on ice or an ice slurry. They lose consciousness, commonly 10 minutes, half an hour. Whereas effective stunning is defined where more than 95% of the fish lose consciousness in under 1 second. So what are our methods for effective stunning? Well, there's a couple different types of electrical stunning. There's in-water stunning, which is basically a pump and a tube coming out where electric current is passed through the water. Or there's dry stunning, which is essentially a conveyor belt. Fish pass on the conveyor belt. Electric current goes to the chain, completes the circuit when the fish reach the chains. So this study was looking at those methods of electrical stunning in the main finfish aquaculture species. So that's carp, trout, sea bass, and sea bream. At the moment, to give a sense of perspective, 435,000 tons of these fish are produced every year. In numbers of fish, that's 610 million, so above the EU population every year. And in terms of economic value, that's 2 billion euros every year. So those are the fisheries. Big countries for sea bass, sea bream would be Greece, Spain. Carp and trout is more inland, so Poland, Denmark, big producers. So that's the topic. In terms of looking at economic feasibility, to answer that question, I kind of break it down in a series of steps. So one is, would these methods increase production costs for aquaculture producers? If so, would they be passed along through higher prices? Or if not, if there's remaining costs for the producers, can they absorb them? Is there some buffer room in their profits to handle these costs? And after we answer those questions, we can determine economic feasibility. And we're in a good position here because actually the EU collects data on the economic performance of aquaculture producers. Every 2 years, the JRC produces a report on the structure of fleets, on enterprises, a breakdown of their costs. And at the moment, we can break it down into different sectors. So a sector is a combination of a country, a type of fishery, and a production method. So Polish carp in large ponds. That's one little sector, and we know what their energy costs are, what their profits are. So of these 17 different sectors, 16 of them are profitable at the moment. There's one carp producer that's not profitable, and 11 of the 17 have very healthy profit margins, above 10%. So that's the starting point. We also have costs on stunning equipment. This already exists. It's actually commonly used in salmon already. So in Norway, in the UK, electrical stunning is already used. So we know how much the equipment costs. We know how much the labor is required to run these machines. So we can apply those costs to this economic performance that's recorded by the JRC, and then recalculate profits with this new equipment. So the first question, does stunning increase costs? Yes, but. So on average, across these 17 different segments here, costs increase by about 2% of the price. Most in carp, that's on the left of the slide here. It's about 12% for carp, 2% for trout, 1% for sea bass, sea bream. Now, some of the sea bass, sea bream, some of the trout over on the right is actually below, negative costs. What's happening here is stunning doesn't exist by itself. It's used with other equipment like pumps that actually speed up the process. So although putting fish on ice is pretty basic, pretty low cost in terms of capital, it takes a lot more time and labor is expensive. So actually putting in technologies that speed up the harvesting of the fish actually lowers overall costs for these businesses. Some, but not all, that you see there. So that minimizes some of the costs. Now, can these costs be passed on? Or would businesses have to reduce their margins? Well, we hear a lot about international competition. There's a lot of imports in aquaculture. But we need to be a bit nuanced here because it depends on the species. We import a lot of salmon. We import a lot of shrimp. That's not what we're talking about here. Those are very separate species in a different part of the supermarket. So for these species, actually EU is the big producer and EU is the big consumer. So something like carp, 86% of the carp market comes from EU producers. You can see the numbers for the other species. So the EU is the major component. So there is some pricing power that if there's a standard for all EU production, prices would increase a little bit. We can get into details of exactly how much, but the point is there is some power to pass that on through consumers. And we heard the survey results that actually citizens seem to be okay with some of that idea. So last question, can the remaining costs be absorbed? Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, 16 out of the 17 aquaculture segments are already profitable. On average, profit margins are 18%. So that's a pretty healthy baseline to start from. Of course, we need to be nuanced here. It's not true for all fleets. Carp seems to be the biggest issue there. That's where the unprofitable fleet is at the moment, and also the biggest reduction in profitability because of the prices and the number of fish involved. But what's sort of a positive result from this is we see the red line there for the profit margin, and all 16 of the 17 sectors remain above that line. So no one passes under the line, which is our fear in answering this question. So that's a very positive result from this study. So just to interpret the graph, so the dark blue is current profitability and the light blue is their profitability after adding this equipment. The equipment is a couple €100,000, so averaged out over 10 years of depreciation, we're asking businesses about €26,000 in extra costs, whereas their profits at the moment are more €200,000. So a reduction in profits, but still some buffer zone there. So yeah, quite positive results there. It's actually not new. So in 2018, the European Commission also produced a study on this. Some different assumptions, some different methodology, but similar results. So you can see if you look along the bottom, there's carp, there's sea bass, sea bream, which are often produced together, and trout. So our results were a 12% increase as a percentage of price for carp, 1% for sea bass, sea bream, and 2% for trout. So kind of similar amounts there, despite a different year and some different assumptions. So there's kind of convergence around this level of economic impact. So just wrapping up here, maybe some surprising results, but basically the profitability of the sector is looking good at the moment in finfish aquaculture. There's less competition from imports and concerns that asking EU producers to accept pre-slaughter stunning would risk undermining with imports. And also that the cost of stunning, because the equipment can be depreciated over 10 years, it has more modest impacts on producers. Of course, results aren't uniform. We need to be aware that there's some concerns there. Carp, in particular, seems to have higher costs. It's a bigger challenge. but we can learn lessons from the fact that stunning is already commonly used in salmon aquaculture, and the sector is doing quite well despite this equipment. And of course, all of this study was looking at economic feasibility, but important to remember, this is just one dimension of policy impact. Of course, things like animal welfare, very much of interest to the Intergroup. We're still talking about an improvement in the slaughter experience for 610 million carp, trout, sea bass, and sea bream annually. So this last slide on policy impacts, well, of course, for a legislative requirement for effective stunning, it seems to be economically feasible. We can apply these standards to imports as well to create a level playing field. And what we see is that at the moment, the market is interested in pre-slaughter stunning, but alone it is not delivering this right now because there's still competition between enterprises. But potentially in the future, we might see something like standards and labeling coming in. So this is kind of future-proofing for that situation. And lastly, just to say that there is the EMFAF, there is funding available for these sorts of technologies, and there's probably a role for guidance to show producers that they can actually lower the costs of this equipment with the funding that's already available. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Griffin Carpenter, for this very interesting analysis that is made here on the economic impact and with positive news. And I think it really would also correspond to a consumer's demand. So it could definitely be a win-win situation that we have here. To conclude our presentation, we have also Andrea Gavinelli, the head of the Animal Welfare Unit from SANG3 from the European Commission with us, and I am particularly happy to see Andrea, it's a time we didn't meet, yeah, and to welcome him in this Animal Welfare Intergroup. He is there, as you can see it, online, and he will provide an update on the animal transport proposal and its implication for the fish welfare. He will also address other key aspects on fish welfare in the context of the EU policy development. So, buongiorno, Andrea, and you have the floor. And yes, you can. We are good on time for once. I'm very happy about that. So, you can really take your time to present, even though we leave, of course, some time for presentation. Of course, you have the floor, Andrea.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and sorry to be only online virtually. It's always a pleasure to be present there and to share more real moments in life. I have a short presentation that is updating on the situation related to the Commission proposal on the protection of animals during transport, as I said, and in particular the area of aquatic animals. As you know, we have, and we can move to the next slide, we have in fact a current legislation from 2005 that is very generic for what concerns the welfare requirements for the aquatic animals. In fact, the vertebrate fish are included within the scope of Regulation 1/2005, but it's true that at that time very little was available in terms of welfare requirements for vertebrate fish, instead it was for the terrestrial animals. The principles that are the general ones that of Article 3 are of the regulation are applicable, but are very generic one. And there are administrative procedures that apply also in terms of different responsibilities to the transport of aquatic animals. But one additional problem is that there is no definition of aquatic animals in the current rules. Next slide. As you can see, we have worked hard to remedy to this with the current proposal of the Commission that is in fact defining finally for the first time what we mean for proposing to define what we mean for aquatic animals and include in fact cephalopods and decapods. I heard talking about them before. And in addition, the proposal has been also delimiting the area where we saw with the analysis of and the impact assessment done and the proportionality issue, the area where certain type of transport have been excluded for different reasons, in particular the ornamental fish, the direct deliveries of aquatic animals to food businesses that are supplying the final consumer, I mean a restaurant for example, the zoos, and the animals that are listed in the CITES. These are different reasons, both administrative, technical, and also in terms of proportionality. There is also this common derogation for the animal used for scientific purposes because they are protected elsewhere in any case. Next slide. The general provision, in fact, are the ones that are applicable to aquatic animals are in fact related in particular to the fact that when you are transporting an animal, even a fish, you have ensured compliance with several requirements that are in any case preventing the sufferance of the animal and are taking care, in fact, of their welfare. For example, and most important for the aquatic animals is in fact the quality and the volume of the water in which the animal are transported. Next slide. As you can see, also we are defining in a way that is more clear the quality of the staff of the personnel that is handling the fish and transporting the fish. And in addition, we have the capacity to we propose to introduce a certificate of approval for the means of transport that are transporting fish on long journeys. And also, this is applicable with the transport to third countries as we are doing this for all species, and is one of the novelty of the proposal. So we adhere with also what the Court of Justice was highlighting to us in terms of the applicability in third country. The infringement also are listed and they have to be reported. One of the serious one is clearly the transport without the monitoring of the water parameters. That, as I repeat, one of the issues that were highlighted in particular by EFSA as a risk for the welfare. The next slide is in fact, and you can see, is in fact what are the specific conditions that we have developed there. As you see, we concentrate in particular on the design and maintenance of the means of transport that of course are extremely important to ensure that everything is under control when we talk about in particular the water quality, the monitoring and also the parameters for oxygen, carbon dioxide, ammonia and temperature, the fitness for transport, and the handling is also a novelty, including the fact that we specify the using of equipment designed to minimize the physical injuries to the animals. I have to say that when we talk about the fit for transport, this means that the ability of the animal should be assessed to cope with the stress of the transport, and we should look in fact also at their health status and also what could be occurring in the previous handling or recent transport history, so that the fish is not transported in a sequence that is too much stressful for the animal. To the next slide. Other important elements that are now applicable, and you see all this is also based on the World Animal Health Organization Aquatic Animal Health Code guidelines. So I mean at international level has been already supported and validated by experts. We have in fact important element on the loading, so that the crowding procedure, equipment, the equipment that is used, the significant change in water, all this should be very much assessed to avoid the necessary stress. Then also the density, of course, is extremely important in the vehicle or the container, that should be maintained with limits that are appropriate and also with not sudden changes, taking account of all the scientific data that we have. During the transport, of course, it's important to maintain a control on the water quality with periodic inspections, also directed to the welfare of the animals. This is also something new. And the important element that the unloading, there are also good principles for unloading. The aquatic animals should be acclimatized to the new condition when they are facing new condition for the water in which they are unloaded, and particularly if there is difference quality. So practically, we have a capacity to collect signs of a problematic issue for the welfare. This is completely new in the provision, and in fact, the capacity also and the provision to isolate and mitigate this situation, isolating the animals also that are in sufferance and to prevent the recurrence of this problem. Next slide is going to be the last one. Clearly, as you can imagine, this was an important step, clearly from 2005, to put together this requirement and to have a new system of control to ensure that the welfare is respected. But clearly a lot could be done. The more, and hopefully soon we will apply this type of requirement, because this will upload in our knowledge more data on handling, on the fitness, on the loading practices that are, I repeat, something that at the moment are little known for our point of view. And so we will have the possibility, and we propose to have empowerments to adopt tertiary legislation, in particular to update the technical rules we spoke before that are in Annex 2. So we will have capacity to adopt, for example, more species-specific requirements, adapting to the scientific recommendation that will come out. And the intention is clearly fully to involve EFSA in this parcours that is clearly extremely important and interesting. This is also the list, in fact, of the proposed empowerment, but in general is what I said. We will see also how the technology and the knowledge will come. So this is my brief presentation to present the state of play. I wish to say that discussion in Council with the Hungarian and the Polish presidency have been extremely fruitful. There's been a strong agenda work in preparing a mandate. Member state and expertise is really around the table. It's something, in my opinion, extremely promising, because the experience of the work in more than 20 years in this legislation from many experts and competent authority has been really fruitful, in my opinion, to have a debate that is informed about preparing a compromise proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you, Andrea Gavinelli, head of the Animal Welfare Unit. Thank you for your presentation, but also thank you for all that you are doing really to increase animal welfare. And of course, we open now the floor for remarks, questions, whatever you feel like. And I have already, Isabella, please, you have the floor, and yeah, eager to hear what are you going to say.
Thank you, Tilly, and excuse me to the first speakers because I came late, but I listen now very carefully to the Commission on the animal transport proposal, and I'm of course the rapporteur of the opinion in PECH committee on the aquatic animals transport welfare, and I have a few questions to Andrea. And that is regarding first of all, I think it's really about time that we update the animal transport legislation, and that it has been excluding aquatic animals for so long is really not in line with what we know scientifically about the sentience and the perception of fear and pain and so on of aquatic animals that we already know. So it's really about time that we update this legislation, not only for terrestrial animals, because I think that needs to be updated as well, but also including aquatic animals. So that's good. There are, however, a few exceptions that are quite big proposed by the Commission, and that is, of course, on the ICES listed animals. No, CITES listed, sorry. excuse me, a bit tired, the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species exception, and the animals for direct businesses, restaurants and so on, and ornamental fish. And I heard Andrea mentioning that there are some different reasons for that. Proportionality was one, and administrative things were another, and that were protected elsewhere. I've tried to see in the CITES regulations where there are provisions for animal welfare when it comes to these species, and we haven't found them so far. So my question is, where are they protected, and are there any scientific reasons for not protecting these animals? Because we're talking about very many animals, and of course they suffer in the same way as other commercial species that probably will be covered by the regulation. Then also the fact that many animals, for instance tuna, that are being now held in cages in the open sea for fattening reasons. They're wild caught, and then they're being kept as, to fatten them, and then they can be transported in these cages many miles and kilometers, for many days in the Mediterranean, for instance. I believe that these animals also should be covered, and that is also a very stressful situation for the animals in question. So also as a comment, and also maybe a question to the Commission, and the definition of aquatic animals does not include marine mammals, and my question is, should they not be covered in the definition? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe, as these are already 3 questions, if it's okay, Emma.
Mine is very short, though.
Okay, then add it. Just, yeah.
Yeah, my question is also to Andrea, and also thanks for Griffin for summarizing the report. I think it's impressive how you managed in such a short time to condense that, but it was very good. My question is to Andrea on the appropriate density. Who will decide that? Will there be also then recommendations or guidelines from the Commission, or will it be up to the handler? Or because I think the definition of appropriate density, of course, it varies among the species and so on, but it could still be a very vague formulation in that sense. So how do you believe it should be interpreted, and will it be clarified further in more technical guidelines, or what is the thought and idea behind the appropriate density?
Okay, Andrea, so you have quite some questions there. If it's okay for you, the 4, so one more on all the exceptions, and then another on tuna, and then on the definition why marine mammals are excluded, and then what is appropriate density. Who decides? You have the floor, Andrea, please.
A good menu. Yes, here I am. No, pleased in any case to exchange, because one of the important opportunity we have in this work is that we touch upon transport of animals for the first time after more than 20 years, as I said. But in addition, for the aquatic is really a premiere to go into such a level of detail. And clear-cut, we have to dig into the different elements. I start with the CITES, and in fact, it's clear that, as I said, at the moment the Article 4 provision, the general one, are all something we can add, we can apply, and it's already something. When I was saying they are protected as aware, I was referring to the animal in experiments, not the CITES. On this CITES animal, I have to say that from my point of view, we could be able to work together if there will be any possibility to have a better condition that could be applied to the CITES species, and to see in a compromise spirit this, because it's only a question of knowledge and well-known issues that we are not really capable to to put together and condense in the proposal. So we have the spirit surely to look with the co-legislator in it. Then coming to the direct deliveries and in fact the deliveries to restaurants, for example, the situation is that when we look into it, it became clear that we have a myriad of transport of very short distance that happen there, and differentiated in modalities and in so many species. Sometimes it was difficult really to cope with it, and so also from the administrative point of view, we have not found a way to go into it. To be honest, this is really a minimalistic part of the transport when we talk about the transport of aquatic animals, and in terms of distance and in terms of what are the purposes. So that's why we have excluded it. Then, to be clear, when we are looking into the future of the question that was on the densities, there are, as you know, various species, different needs, and different even parameters related to the water that are, you can say, correlated with the type of transport, the technology, and also even the environmental parameters. The transport in the north of Europe or the south with aquatic species is also going on in different manner. We are ready to work on it. I mean, this is the first stone in the pond, I have to say, because honestly, there will be a lot to do. Tertiary legislation will come if we manage to get an agreement on this transport proposal, and will be one of the things I think we are equipped from the scientific point of view, species by species, because the water quality really and the density are connected and are really variable, very important. We cannot condensate them in a table as an annex, in my opinion, like that. We will need really to consult expertise more deeply. I hope I replied to these three main issues.
Yes, you did not specifically mention the situation of the tuna fish that is transported in cages for fattening. So they are excluded here when they get then transported, or are they? For me, that's not very clear. As I hear Isabella, they are not considered here, but what is your position on that? And then also, maybe, I did not hear it also, but on the marine mammals, where are they also excluded, or no?
I come back immediately. No, on the CITES and marine mammals, they're not excluded. We are open to investigate on it during the discussion with the co-legislator. Clearly, we are not yet there. It's an issue that is sophisticated indeed. For what concerns the tuna, it's true, I forgot to mention, but they are in any case covered by the spirit of the proposal. The fact is that their transport is very specific. Of course, we are open to know more. We need to know more really about this type. It's a very peculiar transport, a very peculiar way to transfer a fish comparing with others. We need more data, and we are happy to discuss it, of course. It's not that we have... they are not excluded by the proposal anyway, talking about the tuna.
Okay. I give the floor back to Isabella, please.
Thank you, and thank you, Andrea, very much for the clarifications, and I think they were very positive in many ways. I can just say, since I have one of the shadow rapporteurs here in the room as well, that we will put amendments to this effect on these issues that I raised. So I was happy to hear the Commission is prepared to compromise and that the towing of tuna should be included. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for being there, Isabella, and also for your commitment in order to bring change here. I'm looking at the room, but maybe other people online also, have they the possibility to jump in if they have a question? Because I see we have 87 people online. Yes.
They have a viewer link, so they cannot.
They have a viewer link. So if they want to have a question, they can put it in the chat. Yeah. Don't hesitate. And I'm looking also at the people in the room. If there is a remark or a question you would like to make, you can do that, of course. I'm looking if a question is jumping up in the chat maybe, or in the room. No, we have, as I said, a lot of participants online. But otherwise, yes, we can maybe, or I look also to the experts on the table if they want to add something to their presentation. No, but then, Isabella, you want to add something? Yeah, please, I felt it.
Since there seems to be some time, and since I'm really absurdly interested in the issue, although I came very late, maybe I can ask the other speaker that's here just to give kind of a condensated message on your findings, if I may.
Of course, and it's good to point out the main conclusions again. That would be nice also.
Sure, I can begin. So yes, our study looking at effective stunning in aquaculture. So effective stunning, as the definition, is over 95% of the fish lose consciousness in less than a second. Whereas at the moment, fish are put on ice or ice slurry, and it's 10 minutes, half an hour is common to lose consciousness. So there's a couple versions of electrical stunning that can be used. They are used in salmon aquaculture in Norway and in the UK. So we look at the economic impacts of applying that to EU finfish aquaculture. So that's species like trout, carp, sea bass, sea bream. What we find is this would increase costs by around 2% on average. But the profit margins at the moment are about 18% for these fleet segments. There's not a lot of international competition for those species. So there's some ability to pass on prices to consumers. So overall, it seems like it's economically feasible for this requirement, and also there's funding available for the EMFAF to implement these technologies.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to put a question as well. Another question is, would this technology be kind of possible to apply also to wild-caught fish on deck?
It would be similar, but slightly different. So obviously there are issues in wild capture fisheries that there's less space involved in vessels. That's not uncommon in aquaculture because you'll have some pens where there's boats that go out to do the harvesting. So it's a matter of degree as opposed to a difference in principle. So that's definitely the way things are moving. Probably we're kind of moving terrestrial agriculture to aquaculture to capture fisheries. So if we see more successes in aquaculture, I think that will definitely open things for capture fisheries. But as I say, in principle, yes, these technologies can be used.
So I said, as I understood well, even it's a little bit an investment that needs to be done, the benefits would still be definitely there. So really a slight loss of benefits, but it was minimalistic. You can see on the slides that we have also on site. But what is the fact also is that the process then of killing the animals would definitely be speeded up. So, and that is an advantage, of course, because here, without the stunning, it takes really time. Of course, it's cruel, much more cruel. And here, the whole procedure could speed up also, yeah.
Yeah, maybe just add one thing, that because I think that's a movement that's already happening in aquaculture about modernization. So the sectors that are the most challenging for this technology are things like carp, which is inland. It's also not very profitable at the moment, and report after report comes out saying they need to modernize, they need to use more equipment, that it's almost the same practices you would see 100 years ago. It's a pond, and they're raising the carp in the pond, and then they put the fish on ice. It's rather simplistic. So I think there's a move in aquaculture that these standards could be a part of.
Thank you very much for the excellent summary and also for explaining different things again. Emma, would you like also just in one or two sentences of your position?
No, just to summarize and say, I think this discussion is very timely, both the exchange with the Commission, but also the data input, both from the Intergroup's recent studies, but also the report that was summarized today. I think it's very timely that we get this on the table, but as I also said in my introduction, we need to remember that this is only transport and there is still so much remaining also in the management on the sites, in the farms, in the fishing sector in general, but then also at the slaughter procedure. So this is the first step for the Commission, but I really hope that we see the rest of the package coming, because for this sector in particular, there's so many pieces missing. So I really hope that in New Year's Eve, or the weeks or the days after New Year's Eve in the future, I will don't have to see lobsters on sale still in their boxes. That's the mission.
Thank you very much, and also thank you for sharing your concrete experience. Yeah, we should definitely ban this selling of live animals under plastic and suffering really a lot doing in these big shops of selling of live aquatic animals. So thank you very much to all the speakers for their very valuable insights and contributions. So today's discussion underscored the need for better respect for fish welfare in the farming of aquatic species, with particular emphasis on the crucial role of stunning in aquaculture, both from an animal welfare and economic perspective. The evidence is clear. Human slaughter practices are not only ethically necessary, but also economically still very beneficial. So the European Commission ongoing legislative work presents a significant opportunity to advocate for stronger protection of farmed fish, and the Animal Welfare Intergroup will continue to push for robust, science-based regulation that enhance fish welfare across the EU. And I remember that I was also very marked by same experience than Emma, but also by the whole campaign on Rethink Fish, because I think there's so much we still need to know about their emotions, about their social life, about how they work and live together. So thank you very much also for this campaigning and all the NGOs that are campaigning that we do not forget the fish and that we definitely rethink fish. So coming to our next Animal Welfare Intergroup is scheduled, please take your agenda, on the 13th of March of this year. It is anticipated that Oliver Verhelyi, so the new Commissioner for Health and Animal Welfare, will address the Intergroup and share the Commission's forthcoming plans for this term. And as mentioned earlier, I would like then to invite Emma, Isabella, but also those who are here, if they want, to come in front for a group photo today with the banner, with the fish. Yeah, let's do that. And thank you very much for all the listeners online. Thank you for having been there. Thank you to the interpreters and, of course, also to the technical services here. Thank you very much. And all the best if Niels is there to his little family. We are thinking. We are with you in thoughts that to welcome the baby. Bye-bye.